One of the biggest issues that I encounter in dealing with relationships or individual counseling is the inability to deal with your emotions or other people's emotions. This is very important. I talked in my last video about emotional intelligence and how that impacts you as an individual and also those around you. Let me say this. It is impossible to deal with other people's emotions if you are unable to deal with your own. Let me say it again. It is absolutely impossible to effectively deal with other people's emotions unless you have mastered the art of dealing with your own. Most of us would like to believe that we have self-mastery when it comes to understanding ourselves and understanding our emotions. But coming from a culture, I was raised in Barbados. I was raised in, a time where a child was seen and not heard. You didn't really have a lot of opinions. You shouldn't give opinions. And therefore, a lot of what was decided for you was based on your parents, what they learned, and what they handed down to you. Emotional intelligence was a challenge in developing, growing up in a household with parents who were emotionally unstable themselves or who didn't understand the need to have self-expression or to allow their children to have that self-expression. The way you thought, the way you approach things, it was always from other people's perspectives. It wasn't from your own. So culture has a big impact on emotional intelligence. Your environment has a lot of impact on how you develop emotionally. And, the first people, the first role models impact that emotional intelligence a lot, your parents. I grew up in an environment where my mom emotionally, she was all over the place. It worked for her though. It worked for her and then it didn't work for us. You know what I'm saying? But emotionally, she didn't understand. I mean, it took her a lifetime until she died to realize how to deal with her emotions. And I don't think she ever learned effectively, but she started understanding how to express herself and how to express the emotions that were driving a lot of her behavior. The reason I'm talking about this is because, when relationships go wrong, and I always say this, regardless of the relationship you're in, regardless of the relationship you're about to get in, when relationships break down, the breakdown is a combination of things. And it could be one thing sometimes, but majority of the time is because the communication breaks down. And communication breaks down a lot of times because one or both people are unable to adequately showcase or talk about how they feel or how they're feeling. Sometimes you have one person that knows how they feel and they want to translate how they feel to their partner, and their partner is totally shut off to that. They're emotionally detached. They can't be receptive to the other person's emotions because they're not in tune with their own. All they know is that if it makes them uncomfortable, they don't want to deal with it. And that's the other thing, right? Learning how to be okay with somebody else's discomfort is important. But how can you be okay with somebody else's discomfort if you're not okay being not okay yourself? And that's the key. The key this year, I'm saying this year because everything is about this year, right? The key is to really challenge yourself, to ask yourself if you're okay being uncomfortable. And of course, the answer for a lot of us is going to be, I'm not. I'm not okay with being uncomfortable because I was taught not to deal with the discomfort. I was taught to sweep the discomfort under the rug, like some housekeepers. I'm not calling housekeepers out, but sweep the discomfort under the rug and pretend that it didn't exist or pretend that, it would go away. And most of the times, if I pretended to have on the cloak of invisibility from Harry Potter, it was almost like I wasn't there and nobody would know I'm there. And a lot of people do live their lives like that. Like if people cannot literally see them, see their behavior, or see who they are, because they become so adept at sweeping things under the rug and ignoring their emotions that they have accepted that this is who they are, and not take ownership for the fact that who they are is affecting somebody else. You have a social responsibility and personal responsibility to understand how you respond to others emotionally or why you don't respond to others in a certain manner. Cultural, environmental, those are just two aspects that can change who you are and affect you are. The parenting is a big piece of it. A lot of people that come to me, some people have parents that are just emotionally detached or emotionally unavailable or emotionally just numb. They just don't deal with their emotions, and therefore they force you inadvertently not to deal with your own. If you grew up in a household where your father didn't allow you to talk about how you feel, or where you were beat because you weren't supposed to feel a certain way or respond a certain way, it's very difficult not to come away from that kind of childhood trauma or emotional trauma and not adapt that behavior and it become part of your personality or your character. So my goal is to help you understand that a lot of your emotional detachment is affecting your relationship if you're willing to acknowledge that you're emotionally detached or that you're emotionally unintelligent. Another part of it, I wrote it down here, is emotional trauma. People shut down all the time in relationships. People just shut down, whether it's for self-protection, whether it's because they're conflict averse, whether it's because they don't want to deal with a confrontation. People tend to shut down when emotions are presented by another person. you know they're not comfortable. They're just like, and the first go-to is not to respond, not to react, and just pretend like you didn't see that, you really didn't see that over there. And a lot of us in society tend to do that, not just with our immediate friends or family or partners or in a relation that we're in a relationship with, but we do that with people in general. We tend to shut down or shut out. Emotional intelligence is something that needs to be addressed. You need to learn how to be okay with not being okay. I wrote down a whole lot of things here, right? So a lot of times you're like, how do I recognize that I'm emotionally unintelligent? Or how do I recognize that I need to work on my emotions? First of all, you and I both know that you need to work on your emotional intelligence, that you've been this way for a long time, you've accepted it, and just because you've accepted it does not make it right. So if you recognize that, then that's half the battle. The second part of this is doing something about it. If you choose to do something about it, especially if you want your relationship to improve, you know, if you have been accused of using certain things, or people have said these key things to you, then you know that there's something wrong with how you emotionally approach situations. Do you use threats? Have you been accused of being an emotional terrorist, or blackmail or manipulation? Have you thrown temper tantrums? Are your actions self-serving and your motives? Do you sabotage your relationships a lot because of your emotional behavior or lack thereof? If some of these things are applicable to you, then chances are that there's some lack of emotional intelligence, because the behavior you're exhibiting, like temper tantrums, that's definitely an indication that that's something that you brought from your childhood into your present. Just because we look like adults doesn't mean we are adults. Adulting is a real thing, and adulting is hard. And what adulting requires is for us to be emotionally, not just intelligent, but to be emotionally stable. And that brings us to the other point. Last year, it was amazing to me that I came across so many people that I had to refer out to psychiatrists. So many people that were unaware of their own mental state or what was causing them to react and respond a certain way to their partners or even to themselves. And that is a lack of being able to check in and say, this is how I feel. This is why I feel the way I feel. Sometimes you need somebody to help you to get to that point where you can work through your own emotional upheaval, well, and find out whether it's something that was traumatic in your childhood, whether it's something that was cultural or your parents imparted on you. The good thing about behavior that is learned, and I've always said this, is if you learn the behavior, you can also unlearn it. This is the time to unlearn that behavior. This is the time to become more emotionally intelligent. You can look it up at Google, it, emotional intelligence. It'll come up. There's a million quizzes out there you can take. Check yourself. My mom used to say before she died, she said, you have to help yourself. It's time for us to help ourselves. It's time for us to take charge of the things that are tripping us up or tripped us up in the past. This is a new opportunity, a new beginning, a new chance to get it right. Knowledge is power. In the hands of the fool is nothing more than mischief. But if you use that knowledge appropriately, you can transform. You can become better. I've seen it. It's something I see every day in my practice, helping others to become their better selves. Better selves meaning emotionally intelligent. My name is Ingrid Felt, and as always, thank you so very much for showing up here on my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching the videos, subscribing to the videos, liking the videos. Your comments are welcome. I woke up to some comments that were very inspiring, and I thank you for those comments. I thank you for your faith and belief in me, and for promoting me and telling others about what I'm doing here. My goal is that all of us will learn how to practice emotional intelligence. All of us will show up because we want to show up and because we deserve to show up, not just for everybody else, but we deserve to show up for ourselves. You can reach me at 813-708-9064, leave a message, your name, and I will give you a call back as soon as I'm able. Thank you, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.